Nerds International proudly presents
Welcome to the Wild Eye Podcast, episode 89. My name is Eric Lamoureux, aka No Sleeves McGee, and with me today, my good buddy, Gary McCallum.
Yeah, what's going on, Frenchie McPoutine? What's the haps, my bro?
I'm all gravy, man.
Hey, you are gravy.
You?
Big man on campus after this morning's game, aren't you?
Hey, it was a good game, yeah. Today, episode 89, World Building Part 3. It's going to be, a bit different. We're going to go short with this shit show. Pardon my French, but yeah, basically what it was. Those two episodes creating this. And I guess the guys told me, you guys told me, this is what was going to happen anyway, doing this exercise with you. So I shouldn't be surprised, but it was fun nonetheless. Lots of laughs, right?
Mm-hmm. What is French for shit that you were trying to get? What is there?
Merde.
No, you said it was a shit. So, and then you said, "Pardon my French." What does shit mean in French? It means shit, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's wow! I'm gonna get some solid beeping going on right now.
Yep, beeping action to start. So, speaking of which, we received a bit of feedback from episode 88. This one bit comes from Daniel Irwin. He says, I'm with Harrison and Gary on this one. The difference between facts and sparks seemed very blurred. Even in the sparks examples from the book, they list a fact as the nobility controls the swordsmith, and then a spark as the Scar Triad dominates the criminal underworld. Doesn't seem much difference to me. And then he also says, and yeah, I should report you guys to someone. You had me snickering like a school kid while on the London Underground. I'm surprised I wasn't arrested for showing emotion. So it's good to know.
Wow. What kind of communist country does Daniel live in where you're not allowed to show emotion?
The UK. And yeah, I mean, I agree with that assessment. Like, it's not a clear line there between the two. The thing is, you eventually use sparks as campaign arcs. So you start with 3 that we picked, and then once one is resolved, it disappears, and then you just move up. What was future becomes present, and then you need to pick a new spark from the list of was it the sparks from the list of facts, and then it becomes the new impending spark there. So I guess that's one way to think about it. If you know that it's going to be used for a campaign arc, you want something good that inspires you, and I guess that's what I was going with in that episode. But we'll talk a bit more about what we think of this exercise later. But there was also Ray Aristia says, it's killing me. This episode is hilarious. I can only take about 5 minutes at a time. And I have to agree. I listened to that episode at 88, and man, that was crazy.
Gombo was awesome.
Yeah. Council non-Gombo. Yeah, that was something else.
Every once in a while, we come up with something good to say, right? I mean, something intelligible. Yeah. Speaking of Daniel's deal there, in this book that we were reading from, is there any other good kind of world-building books or supplements or anything like that you've read in your past?
Red? No, well, just a little bit. There's one that is well known, and it's called Microscope. I mean, it's kind of a game unto itself, but it can be used to build a world as well. I have it started reading it and never finished it, so I can't really speak of it too much. But I mean, yeah, there's other ones out there. Maybe we'll try a new one out at some point.
Sweet. So, how'd your game with Drew and Brittany go?
Pretty good. Last night they came over. We had pizza and some snacks, and then played the game. Got to bust out my Ultimate Dungeon terrain again. And you know what? I've got to get used to having only 2 players because it's an issue with pacing, I guess, when you're used to running for 5 or 6 people, and you know that requires a bit more opposition. So the encounters, especially combat encounters, will last a bit longer. But in this case, I had the first encounter plan, and then kind of a second one, kind of optional there. But the deal is that they had to find a elder troll, those that are smart, so they could form an alliance with them to fight the demons, the demonic invasion. So they found it, but the troll was bound with magical ties to a sort of demonic altar, and there were cultists in there, and one of them was holding an orb. And Drew and Brittany, they're playing the stealthy kind of people. Brittany's playing a ranger, and Drew's playing a rogue, human rogue with a short sword.
Oh, geez. He's related to you, isn't he?
Yep, yeah. He's following in my footsteps there.
Sounds like it runs in the family a little bit. But while I'm at the mic here, what kind of pizza did you have? That's what I want to know. I think that's really what people want to know.
It was Pizza Hut, and it was like we each had our own medium pizza. It was just pepperoni, cheese, and mushrooms.
Wow, man! If I game at the Lamoureux, I get my own pizza. This sounds like a sweet deal. I think I might have to make the trip just for some free pizza.
Hey, pizza's pizza. It was all right. It was all right pizza, but the company was good. So anyway, Drew wanted that orb that the cultist leader was holding. So they both snuck up on them, got the drop, and he disarmed the cultist, stole the orb, and then ran off with it. And the thing is, the cultist leader was a spellcaster, but he needed the orb to cast the spells. So now they were screwed. There were 3 other cultists in there. They start fighting them, and they run away. I mean, they just won the encounter real fast. It was one and done in like 20 minutes. So the rest of the game, I pretty much improvised. I just used the terrain I got. I would bust out pieces and just make an encounter with it. They ended up, you wanted to bury that orb once they left that place. So you start digging a hole there on a hill, and it's been storming and it's a swampy area. So I say, well, you both fall through and end up like 50 feet below ground in a temple that was buried under there. So but when he fell, he lost the orb. The orb is rolling. Now he's looking for his orb while Brittany is lighting a torch. And turns out they're in a room, and there's this kind of rock golem that grabs the orb and takes off with it. So he chases it. And then goes to a room where there's this kind of magic pool in the middle, and the rock golem is going straight for that, probably just to toss it in there, necrotic energy. So he just takes after it, and then the rock golem swallows the orb, and that turns him into a flesh golem. Just as he does a backstab on it, just opens it from the neck down to the ass and takes the orb back. But now the orb is kind of alive and is asking him to take it to that pool. And so Brittany's like, all right, I want to shoot the orb off of his hand. So, okay, let's do another disarm with an arrow. But she gets a freaking 25 damage on this. So that's the target number that he has to roll on his strength to keep it. And he only rolled like a 3. So there was like 25 difference between the two. And that's where, that people say that, well, and it's true in a way that Savage Rose is just one axe of degree. It's just failure or success. But I said, okay, because of that difference, she shot like 3 arrows at it. And the last arrow sends the orb straight into the pool. Now it falls into the pool. So really, she succeeded in disarming him. Now he's not under control of the orb, but the orb goes into the pool, and then huge tentacles come out of the pool and try to get him and grab the pillars, and the room's starting to fall apart. So they run away through a corridor, and they only have the torch as a light, so they can't see very far in front of them. Now I say there's a chasm in front of you. You need to jump it. And again, they roll like really, really high, and they do like acrobatic tumbles and spin and ninja rolls and stuff, land, and then but still the tentacles are kind of chasing them, and one sweeps across right in front of them and snuffs the flame out, and then that's the end of it. We ended that right there, but it was like really high paced, and I kept coming up with stuff out of my head, really pulling it out of my ass. Really, wow. It was just, I didn't know what I was doing, so it was fun. They had a lot of fun. Now just need to come up with what's going to happen next. What would you have them come up next? Now I feel like it needs to slow down the pace a little bit, maybe like some kind of social encounter down there. Maybe there's a creature. That's what I think I'm gonna do. What would you do? Toss like a golem in there or something like that. That little, not a golem, but Gollum from Lord of the Rings kind of a deal, right? And he's down there, he's a little bit messed up, and maybe he needs to be fixed. Maybe he's been twisted by the arcane forces of this pool, and that's why he's down here or something like that. And you're going to have them do some kind of quest for this guy where they help him get back his humanity. You could try that on for size. Yeah. And then, in the end, he's going to lead him out of there. Yeah. Because they're trying to find a way out. So you can make a deal. You help me, and then I'll lead you out of this place. And it's all a trick, and he ends up eating them in the end. If the rolls, have to die. Dice cooperate. Well, it sounds like you knew what you were doing there. And I do find that, too. You get a couple of players as opposed to 4. Action-packed, man. The pacing picks up. ICRPG makes it really hard because of the threats, treats, and timers die, because you set it to 4 and it's a countdown. When you only have to go around like 2 people, man, I found like the same thing, that it gets to a point where you're trying to figure out what's my next sort of threat or treat going to be, kind of a thing, right? And I could see where you're coming from with that, but it sounds like you handled it really well. That sounds like a wicked fun adventure. Yeah, and it helped with my terrain that I made. I made a bunch of blocks and stairs and all kinds of forms, and I can just put that in there and form a room, and it takes a minute, not even, and then we can just, it kind of inspires you at the same time. Yeah. I almost printed out the ICRPG card things too, but I'm using the countdown deck from Richard Wilcock, and he's got like little icons on there that are supposed to kind of help you, inspire you. I drew one, and it was like the theater one, drama. So that one didn't really inspire me. I should have just drew another one and see what else comes up. But I guess I didn't really need it. That's why when it's kind of fast-paced like that, people like to use random tables and stuff. For me, to do that just sort of kills the pace, because you have to, look at a table, roll a die, and look at it and think about it. And instead of just come up with something, even if it doesn't make sense, try to find a meaning to it at some point. And that's what you do in between sessions, I think.
Yeah, the ICRPG index cards, that part of it with the images might have been a little bit better off for you. You know, you have like, because you're playing fantasy, I think there's 2 sets of fantasy. You get 100 images, right? And you could have pulled out any sort of crazy weird thing that would have been cool. So this temple that was underground, what's the premise of this temple? Long lost?
That's the thing.
Nobody knows?
It kind of got buried under the millenniums. But yeah, that's where I don't really know what it is, but I'm gonna have to give meaning to it. Maybe that creature that you were talking about can enlighten them on where they're at. That's even if they bother asking anybody what's this place. You know, maybe they just don't care. They just want to do cool shit. So I don't know.
You could throw in something along the lines of some kind of like nefarious underground creatures, maybe some sloths, which are like toad-like people. Maybe they live down here in the darks where it's moist and stuff, and maybe at one point they were a race of halflings or something like that, and this pool twisted their magics, or, you know, the magics of the pool twisted their forms. You got lots of options, especially in a fantasy setting like that. Or they just find some riches and get out. Maybe that's their treat, right? They find a chest of magical goodness, and out they go back onto whatever it was they were doing.
Yeah, speaking of chests, we were going to talk about monkeys with chests now. We played a game this morning. I ran the second session of the Eye of Kilquado. You're probably scratching your head, why is there 2 sessions of Eye of Kilquado? Well, we just didn't play for very long the first session, and yesterday we ended just before the final. This morning we ended just before the final encounter. So we're going to have a session 3 with this, but I mean, that one was quite memorable for me. Again, I'm going to start off by saying those that are worried about giving out too many bennies so that people keep re-rolling stuff, this is gold. Okay. This happened twice in that session, and it happened to Gary as well. So Gary was sitting on the fat stack of bennies, and he wanted to re-roll stuff that he really wanted to succeed at it. I think he spent probably 4 bennies on it, and the last roll was a critical failure. So when someone fails and spends a benny, there's one more chance of that person rolling a critical failure, and that's when stuff really gets fun. And it did with this.
Frickin' dynamite was not cool. That was pretty spectacular. So I had dynamite in my backpack, and we get attacked by these Nazis, and I jump into the grass, and then Rosalind jumps into the grass behind me, and I'm like, reach into my backpack and grab the dynamite, my girl. So she grabs onto some of it, and I believe she rolled a critical fail, and the dynamite got stuck lit in my backpack, and she's like, oh no, this is not good, right? So I'm like, I stand up when it's my turn, and I go to throw this backpack full of dynamite. And, my first one sucked because I had fatigue and a few other wounds, so I didn't make my roll, so I literally bennied it 4 times, and then the 4th one, critical fail. Explosions.
Yeah, I think we settled on a narrative of you tossing it and a monkey up in the tree grabbing it, and then it exploded a bit above you guys. So then there was 3d6 damage to everybody. I think Rosalind went down with this one. Someone else got 2 wounds. It was pretty terrible. And then once everybody got hurt, and of course all the extras that were with you guys, they all died too. Then you played your adventure card that says mechanical malfunction just to save your own ass because you played it too late. Yeah. That happened.
Those adventure cards, I find them. It would have been a good adventure card to play right away, but I didn't look at it for some reason until after the scene had already commenced. But you should have ruled it as non-functioning, and the reason is because like you said, retconning, it just throws the story off. You should have said no. You should, like you did say, you should have used it before the scene started, and we should have just went with that instead of you being graceful and not allowing me to take the damage. But I think you felt bad because everybody was going down.
Yeah, well, I still felt like, you had a right to play it, even though you played it a little bit late. But I think playing with Fantasy Grounds, those cards are buried under a different tab that you don't look at very often. And as opposed to playing face to face, where you would have the cards right in front of you at all times. So you would know that you should be using them, but that didn't happen.
Might be a fix for Fantasy Grounds.
I think my favorite part, and that might go down as the best move of 2019, was okay. So at some point, even another player, Corey, he rolled a critical failure too. He was throwing spear, I think, and what I rolled was that he hit a tree limb instead, and there was an anaconda on the tree that fell on top of him, which he got away from. But then during that round, they killed two more Nazis. So I said the remaining two flee, and then Gary's like, "What? I wanted to do some to the snake." So I'm like, okay. So I decided to do quick encounter. And so Gary's character is playing like an elderly gentleman, kind of treasure hunter. And he speaks with that very noble accent and stuff. And he says, I just take off my clothes and I get ready to wrestle with that anaconda. So we go quick encounter because I didn't want to spend rounds after rounds dealing with this. And then, then again, Gary rolls, fails. He had one Benny left. He spends it, and then he rolls another crit fail, meaning that when you do quick encounter, you automatically get 1d4 wounds. So I rolled a 3. He got 3 wounds on that, but still defeated the anaconda, coughing up blood, a few broken ribs. Man, we laughed. We laughed for a good 5 minutes about that. That was really good.
Not aware of that rule, but yeah, old Charles Walmsley there, being the old English treasure hunter that he is, he's like, yes, my friend, I remember back in the day, I used to wrestle these snakes. And so, yeah, he wanted to have a go around with this giant anaconda, and the anaconda just twisted me into a pretzel, man. Oh, it was brutal. I thought I was going to be
just
cool.
Looking at it because you were like, no, it's just me and him now.
Yeah.
Mono and mono.
Yeah, and it monoed me.
Yeah, big time. It was fun. All right, on to something else. So, Gary, you watched and listened Undeadwood. Mm-hmm. This is the Critical Role deal there on YouTube. What do you think?
Well, to be honest, man, I loved it. Here's the thing, too. Like, a lot of people are giving this show grief because they're not actually going by the Savage Worlds rules. The weird part to that sort of sentiment is that they never really once ever say anything about Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds is never brought up. They don't talk about Deadlands. They don't do any of this kind of stuff. It starts off with a really cool intro. The undead wood pops up. You've got the preacher. You've got the... I want to call her like a trollop kind of a thing. Like she's like she didn't really play it up, although she was dressed in that sort of, the old Western saloon prostitute kind of gown sort of a thing. Yeah. The one lady that was there, but she was playing a sort of a different style of lady. She was a person that could get things for people. Then you had like the rich girl, and then you had Matt Mercer playing the gunslinger guy. And that was it. Like, they showed the intro and stuff. But the coolest part is it is so worth watching. It was a fantastic story, start to finish. It's cool that they remain in character throughout the whole thing. There are some weird spots where as a Savage Worlds player that they're not that they're not going by the rules, but that they don't know what the rules are. Like they do some crazy things, like when the Jokers come up and there's just places where negatives should be put in. But anyways, like I said, that they never really put off as this is a Savage Worlds adventure kind of thing. Or they don't say we're using Savage Worlds rules. They just are. They use bennies. They use the cards. The set pieces is awesome. I don't know if you've seen the table that they play on, but it's a custom table. Yeah. It's a giant coffin top. That was freaking cool to see. The acting was like top notch. The story was freaking fantastic. There was some emotional moments that happened in this that were like phenomenal. The rich girl's sister was in this town, And so there's a thing that happens with that. Like, I'm trying not to sort of give away too many spoilers, but I'm telling you, man, by the very last episode, because there is only 4 of them and each one's about 3 hours long, you could sit down with a bowl of popcorn and watch these start to finish. And the 4th one, when it's all sort of wrapping up, became so emotional for the characters that the ladies on the show were like literally like realistically crying. They were that upset with how it all went down in the end. Great story start to finish. The very last thing they say is the game master guy apologizes to Pinnacle for screwing up the rules and stuff. Like, he knew that he did it and stuff like that, right? He's like, sorry to Pinnacle and Peg Inc. for screwing up the Savage Worlds rules, but you know what? You're not there. That show is designed to be entertaining. It's not. It was never designed to teach people how to play Savage Worlds. They don't ever show you the roles or tell you anything, any of that kind of stuff, right? It's very non-Savage Worlds-ish. It's just it's gold,
just entertainment.
Man. It's pure entertainment, and it was really, really good. Yeah, being that, you know, the Savage Worlds connoisseurs that we are, so to speak, it's hard to go at it and see them messing up the rules. Like, you're kind of sitting there cringing a little bit and getting mad, you know, like. But if you just take a step back and realize, okay, this is just purely for entertainment, they're not trying to teach the viewers anything, you actually really, it was really good. It was really well done. So yeah, if you're a Savage Worlds fan and you want to see the Critical Role guys doing their business, I highly recommend watching it. You could, like I say, you could sit down and watch the whole thing. They got nice set pieces, you know what I mean? There's stuff to look at and things going on. And it is really something to watch or feel or read the expressions and the emotions that the players impart. And the way they play it is phenomenal, dude. They stay in character from start to finish. And there's very few times where they're like, I think this guy would go do this. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of that. There's just a lot of them in character play acting who they are when they do stuff. It was really good. I was super impressed with it. So much so that I literally watched all 12 hours of it. Not at once, but it was good, man. It was really good. I liked it.
Yeah, maybe around the holidays I'll have some time to sit down and watch that. That sounds good. And I mean, it's over now, obviously, the 4 episodes, but I remember during while this was on social media was going crazy, especially Twitter. Like, every day I would see someone come up and say, hey, I'm gonna try a Savage Worlds game this weekend, or I just played my first Savage Worlds game thanks to Critical Role. So, you know, regardless of what you think, it's still bringing more people to the game, which is great. More newbies, more people to teach the game to.
It's very emotional when you play Savage Worlds and you start rolling acing and you ace and ace and ace, and the same thing happens to them, which is, I think, one of the things. It literally is. I wouldn't say the cornerstone of Savage Worlds, but it is one of the coolest things that you can do in Savage Worlds is the acing dice system, where you know you just keep rolling and rolling, and you should see them when they're doing it. It's like the excitement builds, and they're like, oh, and they just, you know, it happens to everybody. So yeah, hopefully that brings some people in. I think that being 90 episodes into this, and with the Adventure Edition coming out, maybe some of the next episodes we do are refreshers or gameplay tips. You know, maybe it's time for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, just like last episode, if you just joined us because you found out about Savage Worlds on Critical Role, well, hello.
Bonjour.
What are you doing?
Yeah, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Oui.
Hello tout le monde. Bienvenue.
Whatever that means in French.
Didn't you go to school in Canada? You should have learned that stuff.
I know the basics. Fromage. I know that's cheese. Chien, that's dog. Yeah. Or is chien cat? What's cat?
Shaw.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares? Moving on.
All right. Yeah, chien was so.
Whoa!
Yeah, of course you learn all the bad words first. All right, let's go to a little bit of news.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the news. The news is incoming. Prepare yourself for the news. News! news!
And some announcements about the Nerds International Network and the Wild Die podcast.
Wow.
What's going on? What's going on, Gary, in the beautiful world of Savage Worlds these days?
Oh, what do we got? Well, we don't really have much to talk about. We do have the two, I think we talked about them last time, the two Kickstarters. They wrapped up, did they not? Or are they still ongoing?
No, those wrapped up a while ago.
Okay.
They were both successful. One was the Lost Colony for Deadlands. Yeah, the Deadlands Lost Colony. And the other one was Wendigo Tales. Those are not fan fiction, short fictions, fiction stories. So both were successful. I don't have a total because I'm trying to save up some money, so I didn't pledge for them. And I don't know, but I'll get them eventually.
No, you're gonna regret it.
I know.
I think anytime a box set comes out from Peg, I'm gonna be on the purchase wagon. But the Christmas sale going on right now, 50% off, a bunch of stuff at Pinnacle. And if you're looking to run a Christmas adventure, they got one called "'Twas the Night Before Crystal Fest," which is a Flash Gordon one sheet that has been put out that you can get in there. I actually just read it before
Christmas themed.
Yeah, it is. Yep, you land on an ice sheet and you help some ice giants try and get back to their village before bad things happen. Gave it a read before I showed up.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you got to fight some big crabs, giants and giant crabs. You know what that means? STD, buddy, sexually transmitted diseases.
Right. All right, I think that's it. So we're going to take it to the edge we're going to wrap up this world building thing, and we're going to talk about size and scale, because we're going to build Gombo here and see how that works into designing a threat.
I'm excited that this is the final world building thing. I'm just going to.
Me too. I'm so glad it's over.
All right, let's build Grambo. Who we building? Never mind.
Take it to the edge.
Well, first, I will say that we asked people to submit what kind of mechanics they would add to this, and I started working on my own as well a little bit. I did a little bit of work. I I have created. They're not finished, but some of these androids there, some of these bots, the Vendoids, 3 types of Vendoids, and I looked at the setting rules. I think I picked 2 for this one. One was the more skill points because it's in the future, so people are more competent. And then the other one, I think I just picked the dumb luck one because of the the dumb people kind of theme that we had going on with this. So I thought it would be fitting to have the dumb luck setting rule. But besides that, I could only think of one thing, and that would be to change the wealth die into some type of requisition die, because it was all about red tape sci-fi, the bureaucracy. You're part of kind of an agency and everything is rationed. So instead of wealth, you would use your influence, which would be the requisition die, to get more stuff. And then edges and hindrances like poor and rich and filthy rich would be reskinned as kind of you're a favored member of this expedition, so you get more stuff when you ask for it. So that's basically all I could think of, and because we didn't get anything from anybody else, and like we said, we're kind of fed up with this thing. I just didn't put a whole lot of work into it because it didn't sound like anybody was interested in it. I mean, hell, I'm not really interested in it, so that's it.
Damn.
It's pretty bad. So yeah, instead we're gonna create Gombo. The value in this, I think, that I see is that we're going to take you through a little bit how it's one way of creating a monster, bestiary entry, an enemy, in your campaign. And as you may know already, Savage Rules doesn't really deal with challenge ratings, so you don't really have to balance anything. You just give that creature what you think it needs. I know, Gary, I was listening to your show, the Murder Hobo show, not the latest episode, but the one before that, where there's one of your listeners that wrote and saying that it's a cop out when designers don't give the difficulty of an encounter with their creatures. They don't give challenge rating, like it's the designer not doing their job. And I felt so mad. I wanted to scream at the radio in the car when I was driving. So I just turned it off. But I will say that with Savage Rules, it's kind of difficult to do with the nature of the dice, how swingy the system is. Like, you could try to design an encounter that's just hard enough for people to just succeed, but you're not going with attrition here in this system where you need to deplete some resources. It's not really designed that way. And then, you could think that you got it well designed, and then one of the players rolls 36 damage in the first round, and your bad guy goes down. So then it turns out not being all that difficult after all. Or you could try to make it more difficult, and then it takes like 10 rounds to go through that guy just because you didn't want it to go down in the first round, but then the encounter lose some steam. So yeah, it doesn't work that way in Savage Rules. You just pick whatever you want for that creature, really. And the rest, well, personally, how I gauge the difficulty of an encounter, if I want it to become more difficult, is I will spend some of my GM bennies. Like we were talking about the Eye of Quado this morning, and I think those were some pretty tough encounters. And it's because at key moments where the guy finally hit them, damage rolled low, and I spent a Benny to re-roll so I could actually damage them. And then if the encounter is too difficult, and you don't want it to become more difficult or deadly, then just don't spend your bennies on it. And I prefer spending my bennies on attacks and damage from my bad guys instead of rolling for soak damage, because I mean, in the end, the bad guys are there to make the heroes shine. But the way I see it is that before they go down, they should go down with a bang, and they should actually hurt the PCs before they go down, because they'll go down eventually. The PCs are just better equipped, being wild cards, and unless they face a whole party of wild card, but usually it's just maybe one wild card and the rest are extras. They're just there to make the players look good. So
one of the
do you agree? Disagree?
Yep. No, I 100% agree. GM bennies are a fantastic feature that will allow you pretty much almost all the time to dial in the difficulty of the combat that you're in. Again, like you said, you can spend them on soak. So if your big bad guy takes a bunch of damage, maybe you spend a Benny trying to make sure that he doesn't go down that round. Maybe you want to, maybe you get a lucky shot in your player and you want to take one of your party members out. And you did this to me this morning. You rerolled damage on me. And I got to say, that's pretty emotional. Like when your damage comes up and you're like, yeah, I only rolled a 4. And then you're like, you hummed and hawed for a second, just long enough for me to realize something was up. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to re-roll that 17. I'm like, no.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Your bad guys, especially if they're extras, they don't have a wild die. Sometimes it can get difficult to hit the PCs. So when you actually hit, or when you feel that, that extra is not going to last one more round, you're like, yeah, let's just go for it. Spend one of my bennies and re-roll the attack. And, maybe I'm just lucky that way. But usually when I do that, I'll spend a benny or two and I'll hit, and it'll hurt. I don't know why, but it just turns out that way. Maybe it's karma. I don't know.
So it's a cool thing that you could do with Savage Worlds. I was listening to a podcast the other day where it might have been gaming and BS, but somebody had written in and they were going on about, oh, I don't like Savage Worlds because there's too many trinkets at the table with the cards and with the bennies and then with the exploding dice and all this other stuff. But you know what? This is the thing. This is the exact reason why these are
game.
Cool. Yeah, these are cool elements to this game. You can't do this kind of stuff in Dungeons and Dragons. You know what I mean? You hit, you do a specified amount of damage, and that's it. Not like this game where it's like, oh, I don't like the damage I did. I really want to give you like a solid punch in the nards. I'm going to spend a penny and re-roll my damage. Right? It's fantastic.
Yeah. It still doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but it gives you a second chance at it. And
flexibility.
It's only limited. Yeah, it's a limited number of times that you can do that with too. So anyway, so yeah, Gombo. So the way I understand that we created that character is like some kind of elder god slumbering, and it had the shape of a turtle. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Yes. So massive on like a city on its back kind of scale. I was thinking probably much bigger.
You were
than
going that big?
Well, I don't know. That's the gist I got. But if we want to scale it back to like a Godzilla type size, that would be fine too.
All right. Well, let's start with the looking at page 179 in the core book. That's the page on the size table, and it also incorporates the scale. So the difference between size and scale is that size is a number between -4 and 20, and this number is added to as a toughness bonus, to the creature. Okay. And then there's a range of typical strength from that size. But then they're all grouped into scales, and scale is an adjective instead of a number. So you would go from tiny, very small, normal, large, huge, and gargantuan. And what the scale does is that, let's take a mouse, which is the scale modifier of -6. That's a tiny creature, okay? Now, if that creature is to attack a huge creature, let's say a blue whale, okay, the scale modifier for the blue whale is +4. That means there's a difference of 10 right there, -6 and +4. So if the mouse is trying to attack the blue whale, it gets a +10 to attack the whale. But that goes the other way around. If the blue whale is trying to attack the mouse, it's got a -10 to it. You take the scale modifiers from each side and you add them up, and that's what the penalty is. And of course, that's offset by the fact that the larger a creature is, it has more wounds and it has way higher toughness, whereas the mouse at the scale of tiny, which is a -4 just to toughness, so it would probably have like 1 toughness to start with. Well, its strength is 1. It doesn't even have a die type, so there's no way the mouse can hurt the blue whale who would have, something like, it's a size of 11. So whatever his toughness is, let's say toughness of D8. And that's the thing too. Toughness doesn't mean more resistant to damage, because it could be resistant to disease. That's why you have the scale, the size modifier. So let's say D10 toughness for the blue whale. That's 7 toughness plus 11 from the size. Now it's got 18 toughness. And that's just a straight up. And then there's typical strength that goes with that. If you look at the line for the blue whale again at the size 11, it's strength of D12 plus 8 to D12 plus 11. So that's crazy damage, even if you don't have a weapon. But then again, if that size creature is trying to attack normal size human, well, it's got -4 to attack you right there. So it's going to be harder to hit you, but if it does, then it's going to hurt.
Yeah, I think the weirdest part about this for me when I first started playing Savage Worlds, that like the first couple of times, and even today when I look at this, it's really weird that there is no miss. I mean, if your mouse is attacking and it gets a +10 to hit, there's really almost no way that it can miss. So you're essentially just
Crit
rolling.
fail.
That's it. Yeah, you're rolling
fail.
to see if you crit fail, and that's it. So yeah, that took some getting used to. When my players are casting spells and they get a +6 to their modifier, and I'm like, okay, this is in my brain from my Dungeons and Dragons brain. When I come over, I'm like, this is really weird. You auto hit no matter what, but it does make sense. I mean, if you're shooting a whale and you miss it, that whole adage you couldn't hit the broadside of a barn really sort of rings true, right? It's massive. Exactly. How do you miss? So that's pretty neat. The other thing that's on the bottom of page 106 is called shots and target size, which is not something that I had thought about until I was reading this. But if you're going to make a called shot at your, say at this whale or something, this mouse has some kind of magic powers. Let's say you're playing a mouse adventure. He casts a fireball at this thing, but he wants to make a called shot at the eyeball. The called shot's not applied to the size of the whale. It's applied to the size of the thing that he's called shot. So if that eyeball is 2 feet tall, you have to put it into sort of the, it would be in the small category, right? It would become the size.
So I think what they're trying to explain here is that you don't take the size of the creature +4, and then if you're trying to hit the eyeball, that's -6. You don't do +4 and then -6, which would be -2. You just imagine how big that eye would be, and then you pick a size according to this, and that becomes, so the eyeball would be, the relative size of a human limb, basically, the eyeball for a creature that size. So I don't know. Maybe it's just easier to do the size and then call shot modifier. Because otherwise you're just kind of thinking about it. How big would that be? And is it the size of a human? Is it the size of a vehicle? Is it the size of a baseball?
Yeah, this is something that you got to keep handy. When you look at it a little bit, the scale modifiers really aren't that complicated. It's -6 to +6 with intervals of 2 in between. So there's 7 scale modifiers, but you go -6, -4, -2, no modifier, and then +2, 4, 6, right? So it's easy to judge where you should fit it in. I think with a little bit of practice, like we did with chases, when we were doing chases all those times, this stuff might become second nature if you do it, because it's not even really like it's like memorizing a phone number. It might take you a couple of shots, but so the modifier for this mouse then to attack this thing in the eyeball would be, let's say it's -6 for the mouse and -2 for small. So he would have to roll like a -4. No, he would get +4 because it's the difference.
Well, that's the thing. Right now they're saying don't do that math. They're saying just how small that thing would be. And the smallest scale over here for the smallest thing is tiny armor joint, a baseball, or a mouse. It's still -6. I mean, let's say you're trying to target a mouse with a bullet or a sword. How do you only hit the eyeball? You would hit the whole freaking head, or you would just slice the mouse in half, right? So you don't do like -6 for tiny and then another -6 for trying to hit an eyeball, -12. That's I don't know. That's crazy. I mean, it always comes down to the GM, right? He can do whatever he wants, but they're just kind of showing you how to simplify it and to just come up with one modifier instead of adding a bunch of call shot modifiers plus the scale modifiers, which, well, we know a guy who doesn't like to add up modifiers, right, Gary? So that would drive him nuts. So you just come up with one and move on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, Jamie.
Pearson's taking it again.
So yeah, I mean, so let's get back to 179 there. So you were thinking of kaiju size Godzilla or giant monster size, which would be gargantuan, right off the bat, giving that creature +3 wounds. So even if it's an extra, it still has, 4 wounds, basically. If it's a wild card, then it would have 6 wounds, which is crazy, huh? And
That's a lot.
they go from 500 tons to 125,000 tons of a creature, which is like the size of a ship, basically, or a city, like you said, right? You wanted it to carry like a mountain or a city on its back, on its shell there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we should roll with, the 20. Because look at the modifiers on the sucker gets plus 3 wounds, 125,000 pounds. Length is up to 600 feet. We could put a building or 2 on there. That's 6 football fields.
Mm-hmm.
That's massive, dude.
Wow.
It could be that big.
Okay, let's go that big.
Nice.
So, okay. So now that we got an idea of the size, we can look at something else in the book, and then we'd have to shift all the way toward the back of the book. This is the bestiary part, and it's called Designing Threats. It's on page 175. So we've already discussed the fact that you just give it whatever you want, but then now you got a bunch of special abilities. Since it's a turtle, should probably be able to breathe underwater. Maybe we could give it that.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Then how would it?
Aquatic is what it would
defend
get.
Itself? Yeah, aquatic, and then maybe a mode of attack. You've got bite there on that page, that first page. It's a natural weapons, and then they tell you to go to page 104. There's a lot of page flipping in this game, right, Gary?
This thing's going to have some armor because it's got like that, that nice shell that's covering it too. So we're going to put that on top of it for a little extra that's toughness.
One way. That's one way of dealing with it, but we're going to look at another way maybe that we could use instead.
You're going to give me some schooling, are you?
Well, it's just showing different options, I think. Then you got claws, so it could be a bite or claws. It could be both even. It could have both attacks that way. Environmental resistance, maybe not. Fear for that size, do you think it should scare people?
It would scare me. Yeah. So well, let's tack fear onto that. You see this thing or get into a fight with it. I like fear as a surprise mechanic too. You know what I mean? You walk around the corner and suddenly there's a ghost there, but this ghost has the ability to fear, and that's when I apply it. Seeing this thing, this is why fear is hard for me. You would see this thing from like miles away. You know what you're getting into well before you get there. Yeah. So I feel like fear, the mechanic fear, I mean, this thing's going to instill fear, but the mechanic part of it wouldn't really apply to it because it's the kind of thing you see coming from a mile away. I know that it's scary
right.
and all, but
why in that case, why not just do the fear when people know that thing is coming for their city, and then you apply the effect of fear, and that's when people actually flee the city. Like you see in big, giant monster movies, people are fleeing the city before the monster gets there. So one thing that'd be interesting is despite the size of it, it would not be fearless. So you could actually scare it. Imagine a panicked or scared creature that size. Like you show a cat to it and it's scared of cats and then and just runs off and destroys everything in its path while it's panicked.
Fear mechanics in this game. So if it got feared, would it run in a random direction?
Yeah, basically. Well, away from the source usually. That's
okay. So you'd be fine. It would run away from you.
Yeah. Then you got Gargantuan. That's one thing. Well, you talked about before, Gary, when you ran 50 Fathoms, a gargantuan creature has heavy armor. So your sword, even if you can deal 45 damage to that thing, it's still not big enough to actually affect it. It's like a needle, basically. So you need the heavy artillery, basically, to take a creature that size. I think when you play 50 Fathoms, they were using a cannon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Against that giant gorilla.
Yeah. Yeah, they levitated this cannon right off the ship and took it into the jungle. Now, Savage Worlds still doesn't have differentiating. Well, I guess the core book is this back to the old Paris Conte. Why is there not magic items in the book? Sort of the idea, because you know what I mean. Like depending on the setting you're playing, maybe the setting is the one responsible for taking care of whether or not you have regular damage and you have like heavy damage, like safe like Rifts. Rifts is a lot of like heavy damage and stuff like that. Is there? There is no differentiating.
Well, the powers. You mean like if you hit someone with heavy weapon that doesn't have heavy armor, if it does more damage? Is that what you're saying?
Or this creature would have the ability to say that you can't do any damage to it that is not heavy. Does that make sense?
Right. You need heavy damage against that creature. There are ways to have heavy weapons in just with the core book. Just with the powers, you can apply a heavy weapon modifier to any of your spells. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, some weapons, especially from some
true
vehicles,
rocket launchers,
have heavy damage. Yeah,
I got you. Yeah,
so it's possible.
So yeah, this thing for sure.
One more ability when a creature is gargantuan is the stomp ability. So that means that creature may stomp by using an area of effect template. The size of the template is determined by the GM based on the monster, his footprint, basically. The attack ignores scale modifiers. So see, like that creature's got it's +6 in scale. If it wants to attack a normal human, it's got -6 to attack. But if it uses stomp, it doesn't get that -6 to attack you, which makes it very deadly. And is opposed athletics versus agility. So basically, it's like a saving throw type of thing where you're trying to dodge or dive out of the way of the giant foot or paw, whatever that's coming at you from above, right?
Yeah, saving Benny right there.
Yeah, some saving bennies. So yeah, those who can't get out of the way are stomped for damage equal to the thing's strength damage. And I think for that size, we were looking at what, D12 plus 17 or something like that, some crazy. So you're probably gonna die right there.
So
unless you spend your bennies well.
If this whale did a stomp maneuver and the mouse was there, hypothetically, I know it doesn't have feet, but right. And it hit
flippers,
right? And it hit this thing with this stomp maneuver, and it does +17. That's that freaking mouse just from the percussion. That's is just he's paced. He's pink mist.
Pancakes, yeah.
So I like immunity too, and I think, can you give immunity to, let's say, non-heavy weapons?
Yeah, you could do that, but if that creature's already gargantuan, it already has it, right? It has heavy armor. But yeah, if the creature wasn't that big, you could do that. Immunity to bullets, kinetic energy, you could do that.
How about we give it fast regeneration too? Then we could never kill this thing. Right?
Things never die. But yeah, we could do that. We're just spitballing here. We're not putting anything down definitively.
Definitively?
Yeah, definitively.
Yep. What about size? So when you're creating this creature, you would have to put down size and then list the size as whatever it is on the scale. So we would put size 20 and then string in the modifiers when you're creating this kind of a character.
Yeah, you would have size 20, and then you would have another entry under special abilities called, that would be the scale. That would be gargantuan, which we just explained there, where you get +6 to hit that creature if you're human size, and then that creature, of course, get the -6 to affect people of that size, plus the stomp ability. So that's kind of two entries that you usually put in the stat block there. That's how I've always seen it anyway. That's kind of standard there. Mm-hmm. But Here's the other one that when I was talking about alternatives to armor. Hold on a second here.
Yeah, you got a thing going on in the back there.
Yeah, wife's emptying the dishwasher. I think she just tosses them around.
Right next to your computer?
No, she's on the other side of the house, but picks it up. Anyway, the alternative to the armor that we were discussing, invulnerability, because of its shell, we could make it invulnerable. But then usually when you have that invulnerable, that means nothing will actually hurt you. You'll get shaken or stunned, but you never get wounded. But what comes with invulnerability is a weakness. There's usually a way that you need to exploit to take that creature down. Otherwise, you just can't hurt it. And that's something that you can do with any creature, really. It doesn't have to be size 20. It could be, just human size, and you give it invulnerable, but then you give it a weakness and let the player characters try to find what that weakness is, which can be with common knowledge, or it can be a quest in itself to try to find out what can actually hurt that thing. If you look at, vampires or werewolves, then it can be silver, or, demons, it's cold iron. So all kinds of things like that. And then,
yeah, we determined that that this bad boy had a weakness to Krongosite, didn't we?
Yep. So see, we could make it invulnerable.
Right.
That's part of having the shell and kind of having a city on top of it, really. But then it's weak to Krongosite, so you need Krongosite weapons to actually cause damage to it. Plus, it has to be heavy weapons. So maybe you would be scared a little bit of Krongosite if you have like a large supply of it, that you would show it. Maybe it would not approach mines, Krongosite mines, that type of thing. But you have a dump truck of it and dump it in front of it, and then it runs away and rampages and kills everybody in its path.
It's got a sign on it that says, the sign on it says no Krongo for Grombo. Don't you remember? I think we had something like that because it doesn't like the Krongosite.
Yeah, council non-Gombo.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, so weakness. I think, that's pretty sweet. And then that's it, man. That's all the options. Yeah. Now, is there any resources on the internet for other bestiary or special ability options? I'm sure Richard Wilcox probably got something.
Yeah, Richard's got stuff. I mean, of course, it was for deluxe edition, but the crafty people can use that. I mean, I keep seeing on social media people freaking out when they think that deluxe material is now obsolete because of adventure edition. And I in a way I understand that concern, because if you're coming from D&D, you can't really use 4E material with 5E that well. I mean, not without heavy lifting anyway. But Savage Worlds is different. It's more like DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics, where it's more of like a reprint and they just twist a couple things. So I mean, people are freaking out like it's obsolete. I don't remember that happening when Deluxe came out in 2012, that people were saying, oh, I can't use my Explorer Edition stuff anymore because it's Deluxe.
Wow. Is that your Jamie Pearson impression?
Fun of people right now. Yeah, no, that's not nice. I'm making fun of people, but don't freak out, people. I mean, what's the difference really between a stat block from Deluxe to Adventure Edition? You remove charisma, then you take climbing and swimming, and it becomes athletics. And then you take lock picking out, and you make thievery. And you add a couple different skills and you remove a couple ones, and that's it. No need to freak out over this. You can still use your stuff, you know, even without conversion documents. You guys are smarter than this. Don't be intimidated by a new edition of the rules. They didn't change that much. I mean, sure, the frenzy edge works different, but it's still called frenzy. You just do it the new way now. It's not rocket science. Come on, people.
I was on Reddit talking about this. I had put a post on there where I was asking somebody about something. I don't know if it was Rift related, but this guy came back, and basically he was mad because he was mad at Savage Worlds because Rifts had come out just not too long ago, and he was pissed off with the Adventure Edition coming out because it sort of nullified all of the previous stuff. I really didn't get into it with them too much, or actually at all.
They updated them, didn't it? They updated all the books.
He was going on about how he thought he should get free books with the update because it was only within the year, right? He had gone, I guess, full in on Rifts. Rifts brought him into Savage Worlds, and then a year later they come out with Adventure Edition. I sort of think maybe was the gist of his deal. So he was saying that he should get free books, but we got free PDFs. So like, free books is money. That costs. Free PDFs is free, and they gave them to you. So yeah, but now that you mention it, there really isn't much changes to it. They added in some extra cool stuff, and they sort of redefined the book and put a couple of different rules in and stuff like that. But really, the design of the book and the overall layout and the feel and the flow of the book has changed dramatically. It's really well put together, but it's the same old Savage Worlds otherwise, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, even when we played Rippers, I used an adventure that was designed for Explorers Edition 2 editions back, and with just minor changes that if you read the book, how it works now. You just do it that way. It's I don't know. Maybe I'm just too harsh on people demanding that everything be converted, but there really isn't that much conversion to be made. It's just things are still called the same way. They just work a bit differently. And if you know how Adventure Edition works, it's not that hard.
Hey, look at you getting your old grognard on.
Oh my God, it drives me nuts. Every day on freaking Facebook, someone, is that setting going to get a conversion document or a new edition? My stuff is obsolete now.
Hey?
Oh, poor you.
Salty. So salty.
Oh, man. Pour on the salt. Smoke that meat.
You need to take a break from Facebook, buddy. I think that's what needs to happen. I pulled the plug on that bad boy some time ago. And look at me. I'm happy. I'm pleasant. I'm like a sweet peach in apple cider barrel.
I know. I don't look for it. It just shows up on my feed. Drives me crazy. Anyway, so you do have an idea of, we basically did the monster right there. We'd have to pick up what the attributes, agility, strength, smarts, spirit. You just put a number in there. Doesn't matter. You just plug a number in there. Who cares? And then the skills probably needs notice, fighting. What else? That's about it, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't need too many, that's for sure. Is there anything, I'm just scrolling through here, I would say like the giant worm is, it's only like a 9. It doesn't really have too much along the way of other, it's got a big ass vigor, and it's got a big ass strength. But yeah, you could give this thing animal smarts, so it doesn't really need to be that smart. It's got a D6 in smarts. It's not very agile because it's just a big slow ass move of turtle. So you knock that down to a D6. Give it a bit of spirit, maybe like just like this giant worm, D10. Whatever the strength modifiers come from being size 20. So you can choose. Let's go with the biggest number, D12 plus 20. For the strength on this thing, man, if this thing hits you, you're turning into a freaking solid batch of tomato paste, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Especially with the stomp. If it tries to bite you, then it probably has, a -6 to hit you, which is going to make it really difficult to grab you. But yeah, when it does, it's going to count. So, and then at the same time, on the other end, then people trying to hit it are going to hit it all the time. But, try to do 25 damage on, I don't know, maybe your weapon is 2d8 damage. It might take a few times before you actually do that. So what you want to do in that case, because that creature is so big, you want to do a called shot to increase your damage. You want to aim for an eyeball. You want to aim for the art, for vitals and stuff like that. You can even you really want to ace your hit so you can get extra damage too. That's basically the only way you're going to take that thing down. Otherwise, it might take 10 rounds for 5 people to actually someone gets the really lucky shot. And then, Yeah, you don't want to be that GM that soaks that damage, right?
Right.
When someone finally hits.
Maybe you
at
do.
that size, it's got +3 wounds. Yeah, maybe you want to do that because you feel attached to your
Right?
monster, and you don't want your monster to die.
Maybe you
because-
just want to Matt Stark it up a little bit. That 30 points of damage to the head is not good enough. We got to roll like a 45 on the deal, and Matt Stark it up a little bit.
My God. Yeah.
That guy, I'm telling you.
But yeah, that's how you build a new monster. Really, you're not looking to balance anything out. You're not looking to make it fair or whatever. If that creature is that big, you give it freaking +20 toughness. That's how it is. You don't make it smaller because they're level 2 and you want them to defeat that thing. That thing's not supposed to be easily defeated. It's as big as a freaking city and it's coming at you. So if you play your characters, your players are actually stupid to go head to head with it and they die, well, that's on them. That's not on you. You put a threat against them. It doesn't mean that you put it there to be defeated. You put it there because the story at that point demanded it. And then, it's not the designer's job or the GM's job to make sure that the characters survive. It's their players. It's the player's job. They make the choices. And they decide if they want to move forward with an encounter and face a threat or run away and find a better way to defeat that obstacle. It's not the designer's job to give challenge ratings, at least in my opinion. I know the most popular game in the world thinks differently, but, if you're playing Savage Worlds, that's something that you'll have to deal with,
Agreed. Yeah, there is enough variety inside the bestiary that regardless of what kind of a creature you're trying to make, you could just sort of skim through this bestiary and find something, I want to say, similar. And, just look at the attributes that it has and take those attributes, apply them to the critter that you're throwing at your players or whatever, right? Like for this thing, I know that it's as big as a city, but you've got things like dragons that you can pull from. You've got the giant worm, and the other one I saw was mech. These are all massive things inside of this little bestiary, right? And just look at those 3 things and be like, okay, this has this, and this. I'm going to build this similar, and you're done. It's very simple to build characters. And the beautiful part about Savage Worlds compared to Dungeons and Dragons is because it has that bit of swinginess to it. You have a lot of flexibility with character or creature creation. That's the nice part about it. You don't have to worry about combat or challenge ratings, I should say, not combat, right? So that's cool. Yeah. All right. Well,
yeah, I mean, like last night, I had this little mini that I pulled out, the rock golem type of thing.
Oh, I thought you were talking about your wiener for a second.
No, that little thing. Yeah. So I needed a stat block for it, and I wasn't going to do what we did right now and go through the book and actually build it. So I looked through the bestiary at the end of the book. I found the earth golem, earth elemental. I used that stat block, and that's it. I got my rock golem right there. You just find something that is similar, and you just run with it.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly how you do it.
I just wanted to ask you some final thoughts on the whole. We never really settled on a title for it. Red Tape Sci-Fi. A bunch of people suggested stuff, but like we said, we weren't really into it, and most people didn't seem like they were into it either, so we never picked a title for it. But regardless, during this whole process, I got the feeling from you, Gary, that a lot of times you just didn't know what was going on. Would that be accurate?
It would be 100% accurate. And if I have to be a completely honest with you, when we did the first episode, I didn't know there was a PDF that we were supposed to read. So I was just answering questions off the top of my head. It wasn't until the second episode that I realized that we were following a script in this PDF thing that you had. So I bullshit bullshitted my way through the whole first part, which explains why you think I was so confused, because I literally was. I didn't know where this stuff was coming from. And then on second one, I read the PDF. But yeah, by that time, the ideas were so atrocious that it was just a plane where the engines had blown off and it was on fire and we were just, careening into the ground. And right now I'm just along for the ride. But you can see now that we're at the third part of it, everything went along.
Final part?
Yeah, the final part. The final part.
Well, here's the thing. Going into this, I knew that we were dealing with, including myself, I guess I could say that, three creative person, and that we were going to come out with really crazy stuff, especially Harrison being into Gonzo type campaigns a lot. And right off the bat, he came out with a theme that was that whole dumb people thing. I got a feeling that kind of contributed to it being derailed a little bit. And then second episode, I think we came up with a lot of really good ideas. The problem is, and I think we all agreed to it off the air when we were discussing it, is that we didn't really take any time to name anything. And the names that we came up with were so ridiculous that it just took away any kind of credibility to the ideas we had. Like, Gombo, and I'm to blame too. I just came up with a freaking name and it was Gombo, and then everybody started naming stuff that sounded similar. You had Grambo, you had the Gombolites, you had the Council Non-Gombo, all the names, the Temple of Tim. It's like, how can you keep a straight face running this? There's just no way. And then we even discussed changing the names, but then we realized that even if we did change the names to stuff that were more serious, we would still be coming back to these names, these crazy names that made us laugh all the time, because those were the original names. So screw it, put it in the trash can. That was a failed experiment as far as I'm concerned. There's no way I would like to run this. And there's absolutely no way this would be published in any form except maybe on Reddit, where all the dumpster fires are at.
Wow, this is the shots fired at Reddit right there. Holy! I tell you what, man, we're gonna run an adventure of this. Though I'm gonna put it together. We're gonna make it happen.
No,
this will be my Christmas present for you.
Crap.
you can be one of the people from Crippleton. You get a little wheelchair action going on there or something like that. Where's my Krogasite gun?
I'd rather play another game of Genesis. Shots fired again.
Wow, you're salty today, my man. Salty.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Hey, I think we need to get Jamie Pearson back on the show, and he could be like the third co-host, but he'll just sit here and talk about Genesis all the time.
Yeah.
What do you think? That'd be awesome. All right. Let's wrap this up, coffee boy.
All right. How about giving me some contact info, Gary?
Fantastic. Let's do it. Contact info. You can get us through email at thewildeye@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, MeWe, and YouTube at The Wild Die Podcast. Nerds International Group on MeWe. If you want to mingle with us, that's probably your best place to get us, because we're there all the time goofing around doing things with our buds. And we're also on Twitter at The Wild Die. If you like what we do, which we've been doing it for a long time, Eric really needs the money. It's Christmas time. He's got quarters to throw at hobos. Maybe send us $1 on the Patreon at thewilddie. No, it's not. It's just at maybe send us $1 at the Patreon at The Wild Die. You'll find it, I'm sure. There's a link in the show notes, something like that. Contact info is not my strong point. Sorry, bud.
It's all good. You know what? Final announcement here. So, maybe we should have said that on the top of the show, but we're going to take a short break here from the show. I know we still owe you guys some reviews, and we'll get to it, but we're going to take a break for a couple months, 2 months. You know, there's several reasons: podcast fatigue, mental health, the holidays, and also from the end of January to mid-February, I'll be going to a bunch of conventions. I'll be gone for almost 2 weeks during that span on the Savage Cruise and also Genghis Khan. So that would put the kibosh on the whole thing as well. So we're gonna regroup. We're gonna think about some things and hopefully come back in force at the end of February for you all.
Yes, for the majority of which it is Christmas time. Merry Christmas to everybody that listens to the show. What are we at here? We're on the 8th, so by the time we put out our next show, which is going to be in 14 days if we were to, we're looking at the 20-something. I got Christmas shopping and family and stuff like that. I think now's a good time. Like you said, January, Eric's got a lot of cruises to go on with the release of The Wise Guys. He's become famous. He's too big for his britches. He's Mr. Fancy Pants, too good for this podcast now. So yeah, he's got to do some promoting. He's going to go out in his promoting schedule, and he's going to smoke some cigars and sip some whiskeys with some of the big shots. The cruise,
drink some rum.
Yeah, that cruise is like a week long with some of the greatest names in the Savage Worlds community. So, you know, it's good for you to get out there and mingle. And then what else you got? Genghis Khan is another one. So like, we've been putting out a show solid now for 2 weeks, every 2 weeks for the last, I think, 4 years or something like that. Maybe more, who knows? Yep. Doesn't seem like it, but yeah, I think it's time. We're just going to take a short break from pumping out the shows, do a little bit of regrouping. Eric's going to maybe have a sex change, and when he comes back, we'll call America and we'll start over with the Wild Die podcast.
Oh, Gary, I love you. All right, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, people, and hopefully I get to see some of you on the cruise or at Genghis Khan. Come say hello. You see that guy, that skinny guy with no sleeves, that'll be me. All right, see you next year, people. Be safe and enjoy the holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. Merry Christmas, everybody, or whatever it is you celebrate at this time of the year. Take this time off to enjoy some time with family and friends, the ones you love. Have some solid gaming over the course of the next couple of months, and we'll catch you sometime near the end of February. Peace out, everybody. Oh, actually, go ahead, Eric. What do you got to say? You got to say a thing? Say a thing.
Yeah, that's right. This is Eric saying, wrestle with the anacondas.
Yeah. And this is Charles Wombly saying, keep your pants on. Keep it fun. Thanks, everybody. We're out.
Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.